We begin today the Gemara on Daf Samachalef Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the page. So the Gemara quotes from the Mishnah where it said Shetaglachas hanega v'cholu. So the Mishnah says that there are 4 different taglachas that a person has to cut his hair in a situation where he is a Nazir, then he may have become Tamei, and then he may have been a Mitzayre, and that demands to cut your hair twice. So in total 4 times. On this boy, Rami Bachame asked the Shaila, Haini Arba Tiglachiyos, these 4 times that he would have to cut his hair, the Ka'amar that the Mishnah mentions, Mishum Mitzvah. Is he cutting his hair? It's a mitzvah to cut the hair. Oy Mishum Avuri Seyer Tuma. Or is the hair being removed because since he became Tamei, so that hair has to be removed? So as you see over here in the lashon of this question, even though the question of the Shaila starts with Arba, but it's not really a Shaila about all 4 times. When a Nazir has to cut his hair at the conclusion of his Nazirus, there's no Tumah involved. That's a mitzvah. That's part of the mitzvah of the Nazirus. By the Mitzayre as well, the mitzvah of the Mitzayre is to remove his hair when he's mitired himself, and then 7 days later again. The Gemara is asking the question specifically regarding a Nazir that became Tamei. And the Nazir that became Tamei has to cut his hair and then start over his Nazirus. So the Shaila is regarding that removal of the hair. Is it also a mitzvah like the other times? Or it's simply because he got Tamei, so this hair that he left to grow for the mitzvah of Nazirus is not counted in the mitzvah, so just remove the hair in order that the hair should regrow, so now you could remove your hair properly. So the Shaila again is only specifically regarding the Nazir that became Tamei.
Maybe the way you have to cut it at all then.
That's the mitzvah. I mean, not mitzvah. That's the requirement of the Torah. It's not necessarily a mitzvah. Again, the point may be that because he became Tamei, so now he's not going to be able to fulfill his mitzvah later properly to remove the hair at the conclusion of his Nazirus, because hair that he has on his head from a time period that he became Tamei does not qualify for the mitzvah that he's going to do later. But the fact that he's removing the hair now is not necessarily a mitzvah. It's just enabling him to do the mitzvah later. Or maybe no, maybe this itself is also a mitzvah. So the Gemara says, Lamai nafkemina. What is the relevance, the practical relevance of this shaila? La'avuri b'nosha, whether you could remove the hair with any other kind of way, with some kind of a cream or agent that you use to remove hair, not with a razor. If you're going to say that it's a mitzvah, la'avuri b'nosha loy, so then you can't remove the hair just with this cream, with this kind of a way. Has to be removed properly with a razor. That's how the mitzvah is done. But if you're going to say the point is, this itself is not the mitzvah. The point there is to remove those hairs that are growing from the time that you're tamei. In order that later you should be able to fulfill the mitzvah properly. But this itself is not a mitzvah. So then our sachi and nosha nami. So even if he applies some nosha, something that will remove the hair, will also be fine. Rav answers and says, we can understand this from the Mishnah. Tashema, what did it say in the Mishnah? Or maybe this was the lashon of the Braisa actually that we had before. The Mishnah doesn't use exactly this lashon, but the Braisa that was quoted before says, Umegaleach arba tiglochias, that he shaves the head 4 times. When we're talking about the Nazir Tamei, and the Mitzayre, so he has to shave his hair 4 times. That's what it said in the Braisa. So now, if you're going to say that when he removes his hair for this, that he may have become Tamei, so it's just a matter of removing that hair of Tumah, but there's no mitzvah involved. So then it should be enough even to just remove his hair with a razor 3 times. Why 4 times? The Braisa says in one thing that 4 times you're removing your hair. In other words, all removing the hair in the same way, a taglachas, shaving the hair with a razor, it's mashma, all of them are the same. So Shema Mina Mishum Mitzvah. So from this I see that all 4 times, including the time when he becomes Tamei, is removing his hair for the mitzvah. Even when you're Tamei, it's also a mitzvah to remove the hair and has to be done with a razor. Shema Mina, this is a raya. So the Rosh over here explains the Pshat in the Gemara, even though the Braisa was talking about a situation where there was a suffix. So if there was a suffix, you could say that when he removes his hair, the first 2 times, so that he has to do with a razor because he's doing it because he may have been a mitzvah. When he's removing hair the 3rd time, he's removing his hair because he may have become tamei, but it's still a suffix. He may be removing his hair as a nazir tahir. Maybe that's why he has to do it with a razor. Not necessarily because when he's removing the hair as a nazir tamei, it's a mitzvah. But nevertheless, the Rosh says, the fact is he is going to remove his hair a fourth time in the end, and then he's going to do it with a razor. So true, there's a suffix here when he's removing the hair the third time, but since he's anyways going to have to do it a fourth time properly with a razor, so the third time he should be able to do it just with, like the Gemara calls it, a nasha, to remove his hair. Why does he have to do it dafka with a razor? So the fact that even the third time it has to be done with a razor is a raya that it's also a mitzvah like the other times as well. Adron aloch shnei nazirin, the conclusion of the 8th Pedic of Masechta Nazir. So, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we begin the final Pedic of the Masechta. Okay, so let's begin. We have another few blot left. Hakutim ein lehem naziris. Kutim, which really over here refers to Goyim. There is actually another version here that actually reads it as Hagoyim. Kutim in other places usually refers to those people that came, again? Okay. Kutim usually refers to those that came and were Megayir in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, but over here, Kutim refers to Goyim. So the Mishnah is saying, Kutim ein lem naziris. Goyim do not have the halacha of naziris, which means none of the halachas of naziris. Not that if a guy accepts upon himself naziris, he can still drink wine, he can become tamei, and the karbonis of naziris doesn't apply to him. Noshim v'avadim, women and slaves. What second we'll get to that? Women and slaves, which is Avet Kanani, yeshlem naziris. They do have naziris. Now the Mishnah says there's a certain stringency regarding women, that is when they accept naziris, that's more than avodim, shuhu kaifes avdai, that the Adon, the master, is able to force his slave that he should drink wine or he should become tamei, even though he accepted naziris upon himself, as the Gemara will explain. But a person cannot force his wife that accepted naziris upon herself to not keep her naziris. If he wants, he could nullify her naziris. The husband has the ability to nullify all the darim of his wife, including naziris. But if he's not going to nullify the neder, he can't force his wife to drink wine or to be metama to mason. So you're asking the question, why would I think that a guy that accepts naziris upon himself, that naziris should take effect? Why? I mean, what's the connection of a guy to the concept of naziris that it says in the Torah for Yidden? The Gemara, well, we'll see, one second. Okay, true, all mitzvahs, it's obvious that a guy has no shaykhs too. And here, we'll see in the Gemara a whole long arichis, a whole sugi here, to explain a source from where we see that a guy is not shaykh to naziris. Why would I think that he is shaykh? So there's actually a very long sikha from the Rebbe about this. And look at the sikhas, Chelek Lamed Ches, Parshas Nasai, second sikha. And there, the Rebbe says that actually there is an inyan of naziris by a guy. And that is that we find that before Matan Torah, you have in the Torah, Avimelech made a shvua with Avram Avinu, and he had to keep that shvua. When a guy makes a shvua or a neder, he has to keep it. And the Rebbe there brings from the Cheskuni that says that anything that al pi svara, logically in behavior of people, it makes sense that you should do this, like not to steal, not to rob, not to kill, and so on. All these things, goyim are in them as well. When it comes to making a neder, accepting the naziris, and you say something, so it makes sense that you should keep your word. That your word is a word. So therefore, the Rebbe says there's a big svara to say that goyim are in naziris. Not only that, the Rebbe says if a guy accepts upon himself and says, I accept upon myself naziris not to drink wine, he has to keep his word. Here, the Mishnah is being lechadesh, even though that's true, but nevertheless, if a guy says, I'm accepting upon myself the naziris, the din of naziris that it says in the Torah, then he doesn't have to keep what he says. That's the chiddush. Even though the concept of nedarim and the concept of the naziris is shaykh by a guy. And the Rebbe goes on there, towards the end of the sikha, the Rebbe explains that the naziris by a guy is an idea of perishus, that a guy wants to separate from indulgence or the gashmis of the world. That's shaykh by a guy. This concept exists even in a guy's avodah and serving Hashem on his level. That's possible. But then there's the naziris of a yid is on a different level. The naziris of a yid has an in of kedusha and a carbon as well. That's not shaykh by a guy. So that's the difference. That's what the Mishnah is saying over here. Again? For a guy, correct, yeah. But it's a different. The word naziris has two translations. The word naziris could mean separation, and the word naziris also means to be on a level not kodesh. The kedusha of naziris, that's not shaykh by a guy. But the separation that naziris brings, that is shaykh by a guy. Look, it's a beautiful sikha. Barichas Gadol, the Rebbe goes through it. Okay, so the Gemara, Katani, it said in the Mishnah, Hakutim, ein lem naziros. Goyim don't have naziris. From where did we notice? Tana Rabbanan, so on a Braisa we learned. In the Parsha of Nazir, the Torah says, Daber el Bnei Yisrael. So when it says Daber el Bnei Yisrael, that means V'loi lo yivdik lechavim. So that excludes Goyim. But then, after that, the Pasuk says, V'amarta aleihem. V'amarta aleihem is coming to add, say to them. It already says to Yidden. So what's aleihem? Now, l'rabbi says avodim. That is coming to include an Evet Kanani is also part of Naziris. So on this second point, the Gemara asks, why do I need a pasuk to include the avodim in Naziris? Ha'amrit, didn't you say, and this is the klal in all of Gemara, kol mitzvah sha'isha chayeves ba, any mitzvah that a woman is obligated to keep, evet chayev ba. And evet kanani is also obligated in all mitzvahs like a woman. So why would I think that the Indian of Naziris that a woman is also chayev in? Why should an evet not be included in that? So Rava answers, there's a difference. I would think that Evet is not included. Shani, hacha. Here it's different because the Yom Makra, the Torah says by a neder, and Naziris is a type of neder, lesser isser al nafshay, that he takes an isser upon his soul. What does that mean? Bimisha nafshay knuyulay. This is a person that his soul is acquired to himself, meaning he has control over himself. Yotze Evet shay nafshay knuyulay. So I would think that excludes an Evet that's owned by his master. An Evet Kanani, his master owns his body completely. So therefore, in that sense, I would think that he's not shaykh to take any yisurim upon himself. So therefore, so therefore he can't accept upon himself naziris. Kamash malan, that's why we have this extra ribui of the amarta aleim to say that eved is chayiv naziris. That's the Braisa. So now, Omar, the Gemara says, what did we just say here in the Braisa? Because it says al b'nei Yisrael, so that comes to exclude a guy. Says the Gemara, every time it says in the Torah the word Yisrael, does that mean that we completely exclude a guy? The Gemara here will show you another case where it says b'nei Yisrael, but then there's another ribui to include goyim to some extent as well. By the halacha of Erechin. Erechin generally is the halacha where a Yid accepts upon himself to dedicate to the Beis HaMikdash a certain value of a person, and it's based on his age, on his gender. So that's that concept of Erechin. Erki alai. A person says, I take my Erech or someone else's Erech, value that I give to the Beis HaMikdash. So there also, the Chsiv, Dabel Bnei Yisrael, it says the same lashon of only to Yidden, but then Vitanya and Abraisa we learned Bnei Yisrael ma'arichim. A Yid could accept upon himself this erech, this value to give to the Beis HaMikdash, and the halachas of erechin will apply to a Yid. But ve'en oivik echav ma'arichim. Those halachas don't apply to a guy when he's accepting upon himself this value. But now, yochel ayu ne'erachin. I would think that a guy is excluded of the parsha of erechin altogether, that he's also not ne'erachin. What does ne'erachin mean? That the guy cannot be a subject of erechin. Meaning, if you see a guy and you say, I take upon myself the value of this guy, so then you're not going to be obligated to give to the Beis HaMikdash the value of that guy based on his age and on his gender. So I would think that that's the case. But Talmud Laimar, that we learn out there in the parsha of erechin, it says ish. It says ish, the blush on the pasuk over there, it starts off with Dabla b'nei Yisrael. But right after that it says ish ki yafli neder. So it adds ish to say that even if you're accepting upon yourself the value of a guy, he is included. So what I see over here is, on one hand it says Bnei Yisrael, which excludes a guy, but a guy is not totally excluded from this parasha, because then it says ish. So ish includes that you could be mairich according to the value of a guy. So what's the Gemara's question? The Gemara itself doesn't spell it out here, but the Gemara is really asking that it's the same thing regarding Nazirus. In the parsha of Naziris it says Dabel b'nei Yisrael v'amarta aleim, and right after that it says Isha Isha. So it also says ish. So maybe I should say by Naziris as well that true we're excluding a guy, but not completely. What does the Gemara mean to say? So we'll see from the Hemshech of the Gemara. What the Gemara is really trying to say is that maybe a guy, when he accepts Naziris upon himself, so we're going to exclude him that he doesn't have to bring karbanis like a Yid. So he doesn't have the full parsha of Naziris like a Yid. But maybe the Naziris does take effect, that the Issa of drinking wine and the Issa of becoming Tameh, maybe that should take effect. So we exclude partially, but on the other hand it says Ish. We do include him partially, just like we say by Erechin. So what answers, you can't say that here. Shani, Hacha. By Naziris it's different. Amakra, the Pasuk in Naziris says, La'aviv ul'ima lo yitama. Shouldn't become Tameh. When you're a Nazir, you can't become Tameh to a father or mother. What does that mean? That's only someone that has a father. This excludes a guy that does not have a father. What does it mean a guy does not have a father? So Lamai, regarding what are you saying that a guy doesn't have a father? Do you mean to say regarding inheritance that a guy does not yarshin his father? But that's not true. A guy does have a din of Yerusha, he doesn't inherit from his father. The pasuk says, "Ki Yerusha le'Esav nesati es har seir," that har seir was given as a Yerusha for Esav and for his children. So you see that there is a Yerusha even by a guy. So what does it mean he doesn't have a father? So the Gemara says maybe we could say something else. Ela b'mi shemuzar al kibud aviv. So only one that has the mitzvah of kibud av, which is only a yid to honor his father, that's included in the mitzvah of Nazirus, or in the parsha of Nazirus. But a guy, there's no kibud av by a guy, so therefore he's not in the parsha of Nazirus. But the Gemara doesn't accept this. Miksiv kabed avicha gabe Nazir. In the parsha of Nazirus, true, it mentions aviv, la'aviv lima lo yatama, but it doesn't mention the Indian of kibud av regarding Nazirus. So Ella, therefore the Gemara says, we can say differently, how we see that a guy is not included in the parsha of Nazirus. Omakra, the Torah in the parsha of Nazirus says, the same pasuk we're quoting before, la'aviv lima lo yatama. So not focusing on the aviv, on a father, but rather focusing on the concept of tumah. B'mi sheyesh le tumah. The parsha of Nazirus is only for a person that has a concept of tumah by him. Yotzai v'kechavim. So this excludes a guy she'en le tumah. There's no union of tumah by a guy, so therefore he can't be included in the parsha of Nazirus. If a guy touches a mace, he does not become tumah. Now, minalan the less lahu tumah. From where do we see that by a guy the concept of tumah does not apply? The Makra, because the pasuk says, "V'ish asher yitama," person that's tumah v'lo yischata, and he doesn't purify himself, and he comes into the Beis Hamikdash. What happens? V'nichrisa hanefesh hahi mitoich hakol. So he'll be chayiv kodes, and he'll be cut out from amongst the congregation. From this I learn out, b'misha yesh le kahal, that's only one that's part of the call of the Yidden, of the congregation. Yotzeh she'en le kol. A guy is not part of the call. So therefore, there's no concept of tumah by the guy. So in the parsha of Nazirus, it says the union of tumah. So therefore, a guy can't be included in that at all. Now the Gemara argues, not necessarily is this a raya that there's no tumah by a guy. Because mimai, how do you know? Dilme kodesu dilem chayiv. Maybe this pasuk here is saying that because he's not part of the call, if he becomes tamei and he goes into the Beis Hamikdash, he won't be chayiv kodes for that. Maybe he does become tamei. So it's still, what's the raya that there's no tumah by a guy? Truth is that the Mefarshim over here ask, Taisus, who's it over here? One of the Rishonim ask over here that really the question of the Gemara is hard to understand. You don't need a special pasuk to say that a guy doesn't get kodesh. A guy never gets kodesh for anything. So the Gemara's question really is hard to understand. Rather, what the Gemara is really saying is that this is not really an extra pasuk. Even though it says nichsa nefshehi mitoich hakol, it's not considered to be an extra pasuk that we could learn this out from here, that a guy is not included. So therefore still the question remains, from where do we see that a guy is not included in the concept of tumah? So the Gemara brings another pasuk, Omakra, the Torah says, in the parsha, the same place over there, this is all in the parsha, the Chashas Chukas by Paraduma, V'hiza hatoir al hatomei. The one that's toir will spray the Paraduma on the one that's tomei. So we compare toir to tomei. Kol sheyesh le tare, yesh le tumah. So one that the concept of paraduma, of being metired him, applies to him, so the concept of tumah applies to him. But if you're not, if the parsha of paraduma, the tara doesn't apply to you, so tumah doesn't apply to you either. But again, the Gemara argues on this. Maybe I could say, but for the guy, there's no tara with the paraduma, but tumah havule. Maybe tumah does apply to him. And again, here, the main point of the Gemara's question is that this is not an extra pasuk. It's not considered to be an extra pasuk. There's another place where the Gemara learns out exactly why it says toir ala tomei. So it's not being written here to compare toir to tomei to learn out regarding a guy. So you can't use this as a source that there's no tumah by a guy. So therefore the Gemara brings another pasuk, Omakra, there's a pasuk where it says, and it's there as well, and this is an extra pasuk, V'ish asher yitama v'lo yischata. And the words v'lo yischata, a person that's tameh and he does not purify himself, so that's extra. So from there we learn out that only one that the yischata, that he could purify himself with the paraduma, the concept of tumah is shaykh to him. But if he can't purify himself, so then the concept of tumah is not shaykh to him either. Okay, so what's the conclusion of the Gemara here so far, according to this pshat? That from where do we see that a guy is not included in the parsha of Nazirus, even though it says ish, and ish would mean that he should be included partially at least in the parsha of Nazirus, because it says there the concept of tumah, and there's no tumah by a guy, so it can't be included in the parsha of Naziris. But the Gemara now here brings another pshat, and this actually goes back to the point that the Gemara tried saying before, that we're going to prove that a guy is not included in the parsha of Naziros because it says Aviv, that a guy is the only one that's shaykh to a connection to the father. And the Gemara before said that means only someone that yarshins his father, not a guy that does not yarshin his father. Well, what did the Gemara ask on that before? That a guy does yarshin his father. So the Gemara will now bring another answer to that question. Ravacha by Yaakov says, Shani Yocha, over here by a guy it's different, because he has Yerusha from his father, but there is a certain aspect of Yerusha that does not apply to him. What is that? The Torah says regarding Yerusha, by a Yid, that if you own an Eved, the Eved Kanani, so your children will inherit the Eved Kanani from the father. And that says by a Yid, not by a Goy. Kolshi yeshle nachla, yeshle tumah. So whoever has this type of nachla, the full nachla, not only a regular inheritance, but including this inheritance of being able to yarshin a Eved that your father owns. So then the halacha of tumah, of Nazir, applies to you. If a guy that does not have this kind of nachla, if a guy buys another guy as an Eved, as a slave, he doesn't really own the slave the way a Yid owns an Eved Kanani. It's not a real ownership, and therefore there's no real Yerusha of an Eved by a guy, not Shaykh. So therefore, there's no din of Tumah by a guy, meaning there's no inyan of Naziros by a guy. So Ravacha B'Yaakov is basically going back to the teretz we said before, that a guy doesn't have the full concept of Yerusha the way it exists by a Yid, and therefore, from that we know that he's not Shaykh to the inyan of Naziros either. So now the Gemara asks on this, Yochi, if so, Avodim Nami Loi, if that's the basis of the reason why a guy can't be a Nazir, so an Evet Kanani should also not have the din of Naziros. If an Evet Kanani owns an Evet, it's not a usual case. I mean, usually whatever an Evet Kanani owns goes to his master. But if someone gives an Evet Kanani a gift that he could own another Evet, Almanas that his master should not own. He should own this Eved. By an Eved Kanani, there's no Yerusha. The child will not yarshin the Eved Kanani from the father. So, if so, we're saying that if there's no Yerusha, no full Yerusha, even this type of Yerusha, there's no Nazirus, so how does the Mishnah say that by an Eved Kanani there is a concept of Nazirus? Okay, so the Gemara doesn't answer this question. The Gemara brings another pshat. So therefore Rava says, I'll give you there's another pshat here from where we see that a guy is not included in the parsha of Naziris. And again, the point of the Gemara's question was that on one hand the Taka says David al Bnei Yisrael, so which means only a Yid, but on the other hand it said Ish. What was really the suggestion of the Gemara? That we should say that Bnei Yisrael is saying that a guy is excluded from a certain part of Naziris. What's that? From the carbon of Naziris. When it says Ish, that should mean that a guy is included in the parsha of Naziris, that he's not going to be allowed to drink wine or become tummy. So we're going to sort of split it. So now Rava here is going to basically point out that you can't split it. Why not? Before, when we had this point by Erechin, over there as well, it says Bnei Yisrael and it says Ish. There you could split. Shanema Bnei Yisrael. So Bnei Yisrael Ma'arichin, over there I split it and I say that only a Yid could accept upon himself the value to give hektish. But a guy cannot accept that upon himself. Now, I would think that the guy cannot be a subject of Erechin, that you can't use his body to accept upon yourself this Erech. So the Torah writes the word Ish to say that no, even the guy is included in that. So here you could split it into two different points. But over here, you cannot split these two in the pasuk over here in the parsha of Nazirus when it says Bnei Yisrael and Ish. Why not? What are you going to say over here? Bnei Yisrael Nazrin u'mevi'in carbon. That when it says Bnei Yisrael, that tells you that only a Yid could accept upon himself Nazirus, and only a Yid brings the carbon of Nazirus. Ve'en oivdikachavim Nazrin u'mevi'in carbon. And a guy is excluded. A guy cannot accept upon himself Naziris. That means to keep the Naziris, not to drink wine, and so on. And also not to bring the carbon. So now what are you going to say? Yochel af lo yir Nazirin klal. You would think that Goyim should not be Nazirin at all. No aspect of Naziris at all. Now Talmud loyma Ish. Now you'll come and tell me that Ish says that no, there's still an aspect of a Naziris that a guy could accept upon himself. And that means that he can be a Nazir, but just without the carbon. He doesn't bring the carbon. That's how you would want to learn it. So on that, the Gemara explains, Omri, they said, and this is really the answer that Rav is saying here, that you can't say that's what Ish over here is coming to teach me. Why? Because mishum carbon. If you're going to tell me that the way we're splitting this pasuk is that on one hand the pasuk is saying that he cannot be a Nazir, but on the other hand Ish is coming to tell me that he could be a Nazir, but only not for the carbon, right? But if you're going to say that, then that I already learned out from another place. Imishum carbon, if all it's coming to tell me over here is regarding the fact that he cannot bring a carbon, but the other aspects of Naziris he could accept upon himself, that I do not need this pasuk over here, Bnei Yisrael and Ish, to teach me this. I know it already from somewhere else. There's another pasuk where it says Le'oila, and from that pasuk Le'oila, this is the pasuk it says there, so there in the end of that pasuk it says So from that pasuk Le'oila I learn out Prat L'Naziros Divrei Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that a guy cannot accept upon himself to bring the carbon of a Nazir. So I already know that a guy cannot bring upon himself the carbon of Naziris. So therefore, what's the Gemara saying? You cannot hide the pasuk over here that when it says Ish, it's coming to say that a guy could accept upon himself Naziris. And then when it says Bnei Yisrael, it's saying that he can't accept upon himself the carbon of Naziris. That I know already from somewhere else. So therefore, over here, when I come to the Pasha of Naziris, I'm going to have to say that it's coming to tell me that a guy cannot be a Nazir at all. It says Ish, the Gemara doesn't specify what the drash is going to be. I mean, really, there's sort of a certain question that remains there. What do I learn out from this extra word Ish? That the Gemara doesn't explain. But you can't tell me that it's coming to split the Naziris of a guy, that he's partially cannot be a Nazir, and partially could be a Nazir. That's not an option. Okay, so therefore, a guy is not included in the parsha of Naziris at all. But the Gemara here now will try different options that maybe we could say that there's other aspects of Naziris. Till now, we were trying to split the concept of Naziris to say that there's this Naziris and there's the carbon of Naziris. Maybe a guy can't bring the carbon of Naziris, but maybe the other aspects of Naziris he could have. That we proved that can't be. But here the Gemara says maybe there's other ways to split it. Now, amen, maybe I should say, B'nai Yisrael, Nazirim, Naziros, Olam. A Yid could not only be a Nazir, but he could be a Nazir forever. Not just a Nazir for 30 days or for a limited amount of time, but he could be a Nazir forever. And a guy can't be a Nazir forever, so maybe I should split it that way. B'nai Yisrael means that a guy can't be a Nazir forever, but Ish means he could be a Nazir. Says the Gemara, no, you can't say that. Because Yachal lo yiyu Nazirim, again, this is part of the question of it. So I would think that a guy can't be a Nazir at all. So the Torah says Ish, he could be a Nazir, but not a Nazir forever. That's why it says B'nai Yisrael. So I can still split it. So the Gemara answers no. Amar Rabbi Yechanan says you can't say so. Miksiv Nazir Olam. Doesn't say here in the pasuk this term of Nazir Olam that I would say that a guy is only excluded from Nazir Olam. It says David al B'nai Yisrael, and it doesn't say specifically Nazir Olam. So a guy is excluded altogether. The Gemara has another question. Amen. Maybe I should say I could split it differently. B'nai Yisrael, Madirin, B'nai, and Nazir. A Yid, not only could he be a Nazir, but he could make a neder to that the child should be a Nazir. This is a father. A father can make a child a Nazir. But a father cannot make a child a Nazir when it comes to a guy. Now, I would think that they can't be a Nazir at all. The Torah says Ish, that he is a Nazir. So maybe I should split it this way, that he could be a Nazir, but he cannot make his child a Nazir. So the Gemara says you can't say that either, because Rabbi Yechanan said halachi b'nazir. The fact that a father can make his child a Nazir is the halacha l'Moshe Sinai. You can't say that the pasuk David al B'nai Yisrael is coming to exclude a guy from a part of Naziris that doesn't say in the pasuk at all. It's just the halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So that's not an option either. Okay, the final question the Gemara has on this is, maybe I should say B'nai Yisrael megalchen al Naziris aviem, that only by Yidden is there a halacha that if a father accepted upon himself Nazirus and then he dedicated a carbon and then the father passed away, that the child then could bring the carbon of the Nazirus of the father. So maybe this is only by a Yid. But a guy does not bring the carbon of Nazirus of his father. Maybe it's only that aspect of Nazirus that a guy is excluded from. Now, Yachal Nazirin, I would think that he's not a Nazir at all. Talmud Loimar, Ish, and therefore the Torah says, Ish, that a guy could have Naziris. He only can't have this aspect of Naziris to bring the carbon of his father. So again, the Gemara says you can't say that either because Rabbi Yechanan halachi ben Nazir. Regarding this, Rabbi Yechanan also said that a Yid could bring the carbon of his father is just halacha l'Moshe Misina. We can't say that a pasuk is coming to exclude something that's not written in the parsha and it's only halacha l'Moshe Misina. Therefore, we know that a guy can't be a Nazir at all.